Hello and welcome to Politically Incorrect Knitters. My name is Ann Pinkava, joined as always by the lovely Deplorable Knitter. And today we have a special guest. We have Liz Clements from Ewe and Dye Yarns. So welcome, Liz.
Hey, good to be here.
Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to have you.
I'm almost too excited.
Good. So you have Ewe and Dye Yarn. Have you been dyeing for a while?
Well, I would say about 3 or 4 years ago, I would just kind of play around and thought, well, there's Etsy shops. I can throw something in there and if somebody likes it, they may buy it. And a couple skeins did sell. And I was going through nursing school, graduated and became a nurse later in life and went to work. And so a lot of that went by the wayside. And then kind of the uproar happened in the knitting community. And kind of everything goes back to that. But I realized that there was going to be a need for dyers, designers, people that made bags, stitch markers, everything. We were going to need our own area, our own place to go, because it was becoming more and more obvious that they didn't want us to buy from them. I mean, they were checking the backgrounds of all of our pictures, and especially after the dust up with Nathan Sockmatician, it really pushed me into, okay, we need to be encouraging each other to use our talents and just build our own crafting community. It really stank, but it did bring about something that has been good. It's been excellent in my life because I've made wonderful friends, and I've been able to explore my creativity. And it's just taken me to some really neat places. And I love the experimentation process of dyeing and the duds and the delights. You know, they happen a lot. But yeah, it was mainly started because of what happened in the knitting community. That's when I got serious about it.
Right. So it was mostly a hobby until things got out of control, and then you decided that it needed to actually be a real business.
Yes, because there were yarn dyers I adored and bought from regularly. There were podcasters I listened to regularly and adored. And then here, we were all cut off at the knees. And honestly, I thought, well, hey, even if nothing comes of this, at least I can get my own indie dyed yarn for myself. You know, and then of course there was Maria and different people like that, Potions Yarns. And so it was bad, but I think we've made something good out of it. I'm proud of everybody for what they've done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're right about people becoming more serious about things after everything happened, because, you know, I had been designing right along, but until they were really horrible and mean to me, like it was something I was doing and I liked it, but I really doubled down once they kicked me out of the community and decided that I wasn't going to let them do that. So
I saw that on Ravelry. I remember some of those comments that were directed at you that were just horrific. It made no sense. And some of them would say, oh, well, you know, your pattern is really nice. And I do want to say that I want to say some positive things, but your whole ideology just sucks. It's like, well, okay.
No, the whole fiber community they had lost their mind at that point, because they wanted to be inclusive, but then they would mock me for using acrylic yarn. And so there's just no rhyme or reason to most anything they say. So.
And then they like to circle back though and say,
gotta circle back, keep going.
The indie dyed yarns are just too expensive. So then they started to lift up acrylic yarns and less pricey alternatives. Mm-hmm. I don't think they know what they really want. It's hard to watch sometimes, but it is what it is.
It's so last night I was sitting there, I was, on the interweb as we are. And it was this video came up, and it was a BBC 1 minute clip, and it's with Bernie Sanders mittens. And oh, and didn't you know that knitting and activism has always been together? I'm like, literally, at what point was Bernie's mittens activism? It was a little confusing. But then the thing is that they always say the same things. That they say, oh, well, there was one lady who was a spy during World War II, and she used her knitting to do codes. And then they'll say, oh, and in the Revolutionary War, people making their own handmade products was an act of rebellion. And then they go to yarn bombing, and they're like, and it shows environmentalism and how much you care. I'm like, and literally littering, wrapping plastic around trees. But okay. But it's this sort of like self narrative that, I am, such an edgy and cool activist because I am. And then it's very specifically towards the, the Ravelry crowd. I'm so quirky and relatable.
Quirky, relatable. No, quirky. I'm an activist because I made one of those pink hats. Like, everybody made them and they weren't that great. So, all right, move on.
Yeah,
but you're an activist because people actually get harassed for.
It's like,
because your stuff
I was too lazy.
Been banned from places.
Yeah, I was too lazy to do some crown decreases, so we just cinched across the top, and we had a pussy hat. Great.
Yeah. Right. I made one of those after I didn't make it on purpose. I was making a hat for a small child, and then I looked at it when I was done, and I was like, I can't give this to them now. It has all kinds of wrong connotation. No matter the fact that it was like purple and blue, it was like, they've ruined it.
I thought the hats hat. Yeah, the hats themselves were super cute, but the meaning attached to it, barf.
Yeah, just too bad. But hey, if you're an activist, you've got to do that stuff.
Never mind the thousands of years of knitting that was done just to keep warm. Just throw that all away. It's all activism.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, the sort of useful, that there seems a separation of, oh, knitting is just a fun hobby now, instead of knitting is actually a means of producing garments and other things for you yourself.
Not a practical item, a political item.
So, sorry. Anyway, about your yarn. So are you kind of in like tonal, or is it just whatever strikes your fancy?
I love tonals. I go anywhere between the most flamboyant colors in the world because that's what my mood is. And then I go through these phases where it's just, hey, let's just keep it simple. But a lot of people think that the wild colors are hard to dye, and that may be their experience. But for me, I've said the wild colors are just kind of like bippity boppity boo. You just throw it in that pan and it happens, and they're glorious most time, and it's wonderful. But to get a tonal is work. And the way that I do it, I actually took a hint from Maria Tuscan that she gave me privately one time because I was getting a really wacky red color and I was crying. And she said, well, try this method. So I tried it and just kind of worked with it. And it seemed to give me pretty even results, adding color, flipping, adding color, flipping, adding color, until you get the richness that you like. So the tonals for me are a little bit harder, but they're a labor of love. I love them. So
that's what I had noticed about your shop, because I don't buy a lot of yarn because I have a lot of yarn, but that doesn't mean I don't go into people's shops and like look at everything and like put stuff in my cart and take it out. I was noticing you have a lot of like nice colors that are good to go with lots of things, which I appreciate, because you go into some shops and everything's like a rainbow, which is awesome. But you can't take two different skeins of rainbow and put them together because your eyes are going to bleed. So it's nice to have those to hold it together. It's like the glue to hold the whole thing together.
Yes. There was another company that was a pretty big company that I always would go to their Instagram page and look at their gorgeous tonals. I mean, they would put one after the other out, but they also kind of communicated to me that I wasn't welcome with them. So I thought, well, if I could just get this tonals thing down, at least I'll have some tonals for me and I can bless others with them. And it's worked out. I do have a couple of colors that I just managed to kind of throw together and was really pleased with the results. And then I've had some that I think no one is going to buy this. And that's the one that sells out. It's so crazy. But you just never know what people are going to want. And I love that. I love that when I'm packing it up. I think about them. This is their baby. What are they going to make with it? And sometimes when I'm dyeing, people will ask for a specific color. And even in the dyeing process, I'll think about, oh, they're going to be so excited because this is going to be the perfect orange. I hope for them. I hope. It's such an investment emotionally to dye yarn. And anybody that, it's kind of like nursing. Anybody that goes into nursing to get rich or get paid well, it's not going to work. It has to be a labor of love. And so yarn dyeing is a labor of love for me because it does take up a lot of time and energy and thought and dreaming up things and messing up a lot of the house, a lot of storing of things. So it is definitely a labor of love.
And
Yes.
then sometimes with your colors, do you just like know what you want to try? Or is it like sometimes when I'm trying to make a pattern, it's a struggle. And sometimes I just totally will like wake up or get in the shower and all of a sudden I know exactly what it's going to be. Is it the same for dyeing?
It is a lot. Sometimes you just go into it. Well, I go into it with a basic, I've got these tonals here. Let's balance them out. There's definitely some sort of purple needed or jewel tones or things like that. And sometimes the colors will come from that. But then there'll be times where I'm outside and I'll just see something like the bark of a tree and the lichen or, just the different colors in nature or a picture, or sometimes just those paint chip things will come up on a search and you're like, wow, I really love all those combinations. But the hard part is they don't always translate. They look so beautiful out there, but once you try to put them in here, it's a whole different story. And sometimes it just comes off as gobbledygook, or sometimes it's a beautiful skein, but then you go knit it up and it's like, oh, what? So it's a gamble. All of it's a gamble, but it's a lovely gamble.
I
For me.
remember that you had, I believe it was some roving that was some pre-loud colors that that you had it and you're like, oh man, who's gonna like this? I'll put it out there. I believe it was Hagrid's boxer shorts.
Yes.
Was what you just like slapped a name on it, like, oh man, okay. And then as I recall, like people were like, yes, give me that. It was
gone.
like browns and greens and
yeah, there were 3 skeins of yarn dyed and then some fiber dyed with some dye I had left over that was mixed up. And I just thought, well, I'll just do a dye dump and see what happens. And that's what happened. And I thought, well, I'm just going to really stick it to him, give him a Harry Potter name. And so I did. And there it went. It flew away.
I was a big fan of that myself. There's something about, because I have dyed recreationally. I've never had the opportunity, time, space to actually do it. But there's something about when you take all the colors you have left over and you just mix them together, and like the way this yarn will soak up different things, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, that fiber was in the pan was the most horrid looking liquid. And I remember thinking, this is going to be something I'm spinning by myself, I guess. And when I pulled it out, all the places that all that dye went to and broke and did all that, I couldn't believe it. Because in the pan, it looked like my husband had changed the oil. It was terrible. Terrible. Now, this was a color it's on the back burner, and it's definitely one that's going to go in the shop at some point. And I called it 501s because it reminded me of 501 kind of faded jeans. And I didn't want to put acid wash because I searched the names before I give them. And if everybody and their mom has acid wash jeans or something, like I'll go a different route. Sometimes it's very inconvenient because the name is so perfect. I mean, these look like acid wash jeans, but I went with 501s because I always had faded 501s in high school that I wore forever. And this is the blocked hat by Liz Clothier. I never say her name right, but I love to Clothier. Liz Clothier. Okay. So this is another blocked hat, and this is in my Tea Cozy yarn, which is a gray base, and it has some gold and little flecks of fuchsia and some deep purples. And the name Tea Cozy doesn't really make any sense, but how I came to it, because you look at it and you're like, how's it a tea cozy? What? But I just thought, how cute would it be to knit a tea cozy in these colors and slide it over my little teapot? So I named it after the finished product. So that's how that came about. That's a pretty popular one.
Yeah, which I bought some yarn from you a while back on sale, and I just thought that the color was so great, and I knitted up like this little baby sweater I had left over. I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to make a tea cozy. So I'm like, woohoo, this is great. I give it to my mother, and she had the teapot on the tea tray, and the dog ran by and flipped it. So the teapot crashed with the tea cozy in it, and it permanently dyed it. I'm like, no.
I saw that. It didn't look too bad though. It looked okay.
Well, it's reasonable, but I'm just like,
now it's a real tea cozy. It got its wings.
It's proper.
It got its wings. Okay. And this, I have this cowl, which I designed this cowl. It's got my hair on it. And it was my baby for a week. Little did I know, because I don't follow these people anymore, but a very big designer uses this same pattern in everything right now. So this had to go hide somewhere, but this is the main color is Mermaid Spaghetti. And then in the little cobblestones there, it was my Spiced Fall mini skein set. And it had this really pretty blue and a gold and a magenta and kind of a pumpkin, and then a rich mahogany. And I thought that turned out really pretty.
Oh, and there is so many things in the knitting world too, where like, you know, I do the sort of in the round intarsia. Well, nobody, like, I didn't know that anybody else had done in the round intarsia the way I did it until like when I was putting the Betsy Ross hat together and searching it. And I'm like, oh man, maybe this isn't just a me thing. Like, oh wow, other people do that too. That's neat.
Yeah, but there's nothing new under the sun. I mean,
no, there really isn't.
I don't know how many times that I've gone through Instagram and I'll see somebody that has almost an identical yarn colorway as I do, and you don't jump up and down and go bonkers. You just say, hey, this is a color combination that's pleasing to a lot of people, and there's only so many color combinations you can come up with. So and everybody puts their little bit of spin on it, and you can always make it your own. That's just crafting,
right? And that's the thing, that it's almost like if you've become a big designer or a big dyer or whatever, you expect people to not do what you're doing. And there are people who aren't on the internet, who have no idea what's going on, who are probably dyeing yarn similar to yours, because like you said, there's only so many stitches and colors. And at some point, I mean, if somebody came out with a Trump hat that said censored, I would probably be like, well, they probably copied me. But you know, if somebody uses this with something else, maybe I inspired them, but if they didn't take my pattern and plagiarize it, then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to rant.
It's okay. Anyway.
Yeah, back to your yarn. What else do you have to show us? I'm sorry.
Well, I'll just show one more kind of popular colorway, because a designer, she goes by Gingy Knits on Instagram, and she designed the Awestruck cardigan with this yarn that I sent her, and the color is Awestruck, and it's been a popular color too. So I try to keep it in the shop. It's just an amazing blue. And really, when I got this color, I was awestruck, and it sings. It's so blue it sings. I love it. So this is how it knits up. This is another blocked hat. There was a blocked hat contest, so I entered probably 300 times. So
Did you win?
I won some stitch markers. I did.
Hey!
So yeah.
Awesome.
But that's it as far as like stuff from my shop that I'll bore you with. But
Hey,
it's not boring.
We are here for that.
We are.
Give us that sweet yarn.
Do you...
Ba-da-da-da-da.
Wow. I didn't know it was going to go this way today. So do you do like regular shop updates? Or are you one of those people that just throws things into the shop when they're ready?
Right now, I'm of the mind that if it's ready and I can put it out there, power to the people, get that yarn going. But I think if I manage to get a little bit bigger, then I'll have to do regular shop updates. Because like I said, the thing with pans being around all the time and interrupting dinner and things like that, that's just got to stop. So I will probably go to a more regular dyeing schedule. Right now, it's kind of whatever mood hits me or whatever I'm getting low on. I panic and I think, well, I need to get more in the shop. But I haven't been one that just announces a shop update or something coming up. I did try that once. I kind of lied a little bit. I did try that once. And several people were like, yay, but then nothing sold. So I just said, I'm just going to put it in there and people can come get it if they want to. It's a free for all.
That's funny. So I'll put a link to her shop in the comments, and probably best to just bookmark that so that when you're feeling like you might need some yarn, you can go see what's happening.
I try to go on social media and say, look, this is about to go into the shop. A bunch of this, if you like this, it's headed that way. So I do kind of update that way, but it's not anything that's a lead up to like a crescendo of, here the yarn will be in this date. And I really think that works well for people. I do like the it's worked on me, the drum up and the fury of, oh my gosh, I need to be there for this update.
Huh.
But I don't know. I'm not there yet. I'm just not there yet.
So another reason we're talking to you today is not just because of your lovely yarns, but also you are a nurse, hospice nurse in the past, which is quite a difficult business to be in. And through the whole COVID crisis, whatever, that for anyone, but specifically that you've had a pretty hard time of it. There's one sort of internet conversation back and forth that we were both part of, in which you as a nurse were then called all sorts of COVID denying names because of your different take on things.
Mm-hmm. Well, when COVID hit, of course, I watched the show Unsafe Space, and Carter, the host at that time, was locking down, and he had spoken to someone from China, kind of boots on the ground type interview about what was going on. And I started to tell my employer, we might need to be looking at getting a lot of masks, get all the PPE we can get. And then it was my coworkers were all kind of like, this is not any more serious than the flu. It's all hubbub. Well, okay, but they're talking about shortages, and it was kind of like you could watch the shortages happening across the planet. And I don't know if you remember, but it seemed like aspirins and any kind of over-the-counter pain relievers just started to not be on the shelves anymore. So I kept kind of saying, we really need to get ahead of this. And then the shortages happened. And then here came all this information that they would need a dedicated COVID nurse. And people started getting scared. People started dying. And the news turned from go to Chinatown and go to the theater, who cares, and don't bother about wearing a mask, to we're all going to die. So that kind of filtered into my office. And So then they wanted a dedicated COVID nurse. I tell you what, it was hard to watch everyone be so scared that they were almost too scared to be the COVID nurse. They were like, I'm going to have to go home to my family, and nobody wanted to do it. And there was kind of some shaming, like, you guys are nurses. This is what you signed up for. But at that point, it was so up in the air. It was very frightening. And then when we went into homes, we had to wear so much PPE, and a home environment is different than the hospital, because in the hospital, once you come out of that room, you can take all that stuff off. But when you're in the home for a 30 to 40 minute, sometimes an hour visit with a critical patient, it's different. You can't take all that off. And if you're educating and talking and you're wearing an N95 and another mask over it and all this other stuff, about the time you get done with the visit, you'd about pass out. I mean, it was crazy. So where I was at that point, my husband is considered essential for his line of work, and I was considered essential for my line of work. And then we had to make a decision for our family who was going to be home. And since I was part-time, and my husband honestly really did not want me to keep taking risks going into patients' homes, so I was the one who came home. And I do feel bad. I feel some guilt about that, because I've managed to avoid a lot of what a lot of nurses have gone through. But how I feel personally about COVID and masks, I believe COVID is real and I believe it's serious, but I don't think the measures that they have taken, as far as lockdowns, double masking, triple masking, the rollout of the vaccinations, it's something more nefarious to me than just fighting a virus. Because before I was a nurse, I was a pharmacy technician. So I had to go to a little pharmacy technician school, and we learned a lot about pharmacology and how quickly they rolled out these vaccinations should alarm people, because it's just not something that's done. And I have strong opinions about a lot of people essentially being guinea pigs at this point.
Right.
I don't.
And to pause what you're saying, I mean, when COVID first happened, and like you said, people were afraid. You don't want to, you've heard that this is terrible, and you do,
Mhm.
and I mean, it's not as if it doesn't affect people, or that people don't get seriously ill or die, but the level of fear we had in the don't touch, don't get close, stay away, everything else. I'm not sure I want to leave my home because I'm afraid of this.
Mhm.
That you had sort of the sort of lip service, as it went on, and a lot of it was like, oh wait, I know people who have had this, and they're okay.
Mhm.
Like a couple of them, and down the line, it's like there's still the lip service to that fear, except nobody is acting on that fear beyond yelling at people to wear masks that are ineffective.
And the development of the new species of Karen that came out of all this, that's astounding. People willing to rat out their neighbors, practically have their neighbors swatted over not wearing a mask or having a barbecue, where these used to be random stories that you kind of hear, where the neighborhood Karen that was a vegan would call on her neighbors for barbecuing meat or something. Here we go into a good chunk of our civilized American society is okay with getting their neighbor arrested, getting their neighbor hauled out of games. And the mixed messages that came from, well, social distancing is okay. Well, masks are okay. Well, then none of it's okay. You need to be all of the above at all times. And then in your car, and when you're in home and lying in bed, it just became ridiculous. And it wasn't based on any kind of science that was taught to me in nursing school, but I guess there's new science every day. But
And new words every day. I mean, you said Karen, but some people use the same term Karen as the quote angry woman who says, I don't need to follow the rules. And then it's like, yeah, but they're, they'll take one term and then switch it to the other term. Or even, terms like herd immunity, where herd immunity used to be most people got sick and then they got over it, and then there's an immunity to whoever the virus is. And now the term for herd immunity is when a lot of people are vaccinated, which is not the definition of the term.
Right. That morphed into something amazing as a nurse, that I sat through nursing school and was taught the basics on these things. And I'm sure there'll be people that come for a nursing degree like, well, you're not a doctor and you're not an epidemiologist, but they tell you basic things. And that herd immunity is when a virus runs through the community, people get it, XYZ, it's done. Now it's morphed into something completely different that comes only with a vaccine. I don't understand. And then that transition of the Karen being the ones who tattled about the non-mask wearers, how they proactively set out to flip the meaning of it, that a Karen became, the Trump supporter that wouldn't wear a mask, just totally stereotypical and gross. But
yeah, well, I think that this pandemic has almost given people the opportunity to let that bitter inside come out. Like people who were unhappy with whatever now have an outlet for it. Like, oh, you're not wearing a mask. You're and I am not big on the COVID vaccine at all. But I used to do vaccine trials. And so I would go in and get the shots before they were offered to people in the community. And I went in knowing that there was a risk, but I also went in knowing that it had been studied for, 5 years. And they were pretty sure that it was okay. You know what I mean? And I had an opportunity to be a guinea pig for this vaccine, and I chose not to, because I don't have an issue with vaccines. My first study I did was an RSV vaccine for pregnant women. I think that's a great idea because RSV is very bad for babies. And if they give the mom immunity and help some baby, like I was all about that. But they had been doing it for a long time. It wasn't like this racing to see who can get it first. And the fact that they're not telling us, they're suppressing side effects and they're suppressing deaths, and I think that there's just so much stuff that we don't know that it's just really disturbing on many levels. But that's just my take.
And when you look at, you talk about knitting being political or activism. When you make vaccines activism, I feel like that's a very dangerous place. Before Trump left office, they ridiculed him and badgered him about, how is this vaccine going to happen in less than a year? Well, then he did it. And then they said, we aren't taking it. But then as soon as it was their guy shuffling into office, they were all on board. And now if you don't take it, you're anti-science. Where 6 months ago, if you took it, you were anti-science. I can't follow their logic. They keep me spinning. All I can say is I want to see minimum 5 years of people being vaccinated before I even consider taking something like that. I just can't. I'm not giving anybody any nursing advice. I would never do that. I would never say don't get the vaccine if it's what makes you feel more comfortable and safe. I would just say research. But I don't know. I guess it goes back to gaslighting. We're so gaslit that we're just high on the fumes. We can't figure out the truth. And what I know is from pharmacy and nursing, the truth is vaccines get tested. There is such thing as herd immunity, and double masking causes you to breathe in a ton of CO2 and affects your brain function. But now it's like wear a mask everywhere you are, mask in the shower, wear 5 masks. I don't.
Yeah. And you keep bringing up herd immunity too. And you know what I am concerned about? I have kids. I have kids who last year, one of them had the flu, they've had ear infections, and now nobody is exposed to any of that. So what is
Mhm.
going to happen? Like my kids have been homeschooled because, and Anna and I have talked about this a lot. We choose to homeschool our kids because we didn't want them masked, but we also choose not to take them to the store and things because we do have a couple of people in our family that are really high risk.
Mhm.
So we try not to bring the kids around because my kids are small and they're gross. And if anybody's going to pick it up in a store, it's probably going to be one of them licking something. So, we just choose to eliminate that. But they've been home for a year now. What is going to happen? What is going to happen? Are we ever going to go back up? Are we going to all be dying of strep throat and stuff after this because nobody has any sort of tolerance? What? I don't know. I got nothing. But
we'll just have to see. I mean, this is the new grand experiment. What is going to be the fallout of all this, and the fallout that we're already starting to see as far as mental health issues, and even that mental health issues, the data is out there, but they will act like it's something that's just not important. It's very important.
Right. The mental problem, you have mental health issues, you have just plain stress and unhappiness. The suicide rate
Mhm.
is outrageous, especially among young people. There was a recent thing out that the suicide rate in Japan is up 17%. It was already high.
Mhm.
Are we gonna, that obviously that's their own governments, but it's like, welcome to the future where there are no Japanese. Why? Well, we locked them in their houses and it was very bad for a lot of people. Like it was, that we have all these young kids with problems, and then not just suicide, which is also horrible, but just aversion to other people now that you're not gaining those social skills, and not having those social skills cause its own stress.
Mhm.
And even more people being rude to each other in the store. Well, I don't know who you are. Like I can yell
Yeah.
at you and you don't know me and I don't know you,
Mhm.
and I can be rude, and like it's another way to sort of cut people apart and not bring them together, all while saying that we're all together in this with our little rainbow hearts or whatever they do this
Yeah.
and we're
You,
all together alone. That's what they say, which doesn't make any sense. But what about the teachers unions too, who are refusing to go back to school? That's just contributing. Their priority should be the children, and them refusing is just contributing to the issues that the kids are having. It makes no
Mhm.
sense to me. But
especially when they're talking about that for their safety, they don't need to go back and the kids don't need to go back, and they're telling you this from some white sandy beach somewhere in the tropics. Give me a
Hey,
break.
Zoom calls make heroes. That's what.
if I was on a sandy beach, I might also feel like I don't need my kids to go back to school either.
No,
But
never.
we just got a foot of snow, and I'm already tired of them being trapped in the house with me. So I guess it depends
Mhm.
on your perspective.
Yes. Do you guys remember that gal? She was young and she was in the elevator with like a FedEx person or something, and the FedEx lady's mask had slipped down below her nose. And this, I want to say maybe she was a teenager. She looked very young. She flipped that this lady had let her mask slip. I mean, was hitting the walls. And
Crazy.
I'm so afraid for our young people that cannot cope with anything. And they're supposed to go to a job interview, have real life kick in at some point. How are they going to cope? And now we're locking them all up and basically telling them to be afraid of germs on other people. I I really wonder. I'm afraid for young people. I have 2 boys that are young, and we've tried to just present it as normally as we can. Yes, this is a pandemic and there are some very weird things going on, but I just pray that I'm telling them the truth when I said this is just a season, it's temporary. But sometimes I really don't know. Are we going to go back to normal? I don't know. I really don't know.
And I think the chick in the elevator freaking out, I think that that's just a product of our society nowadays. I was having a conversation with someone and I was talking about things like, you see so many families where the kids run the houses now, and there's no I say it all the time. We're all in our house together. My husband works from home. I mostly work from home. The kids are homeschooled, so we're together all the time. But that doesn't mean that they run our entire house. I'm probably more lenient than I used to be when they had a bigger sphere in a bigger world. But they're still the kids. And if we're having a discussion, they're still the kids. And they I think that a lot of the problems come from people not teaching about respect and boundaries and, oh, my kid wants to do X, Y, and Z. So that's not how it is. My kid's got a Switch for Christmas. Let me tell you, best bargaining chip we have ever gotten. Oh, you're going to talk to me like that? Well, guess what? Like all of it. But I just think that that's part of the problem is that parents don't parent like that either, which doesn't help. You say you talk to your kids about, we things will go back to normal, at least hopefully more normal than they are now. And this is only a time. But I think that most people aren't doing that. I think most people they're terrifying their children because there are no boundaries. There are no you're the kid. I'm going to tell you that, yeah, we're taking care of you. COVID sucks. We all know it sucks, but it will go away. That's how we've dealt with it here. It'll go away. It's terrible now, but we'll get over it. And I think that people are allowing it to encompass their entire world, and they don't.
It's consuming them.
Yes. Thank you. Couldn't think of
the phrase I say a lot at home is, I don't know. I've never done a pandemic before. I'm learning with you. Cut me some slack.
And also to kind of skip in the middle here. So I don't watch cable TV, but I have the radio going on a lot. And I do love those CDC taxpayer funded ads that they have. And it's really bizarre to see the switch in them over time, where you have reassuring older man saying that you should wear your mask at all times. It's unsafe to be in the same house or building with people who are not of your household. And then it's an ad which sounds more like it's supposed to be marketed to sort of, like Native American people where, oh man, grandma, why can't we do this get together? Oh, it's because there is a bad disease and we have to stay away from people and wear a mask. All right, grandma, I got it. And it's like, what the? And even, what little TV I do get, all of the ads are, oh, well, aren't we, we're all doing our stylish social distancing. We're getting that grub hub and we're doing whatever the other thing is because we're all cool and in this pandemic and we are doing the morally right thing. It's like almost every ad, that is the push. It is moral to do what you're told and it is moral to be afraid. That you have that sort of mentality going. And, again, being conservative for my life, I naturally have skepticism for when a mainstream media outlet is trying to preach something to you. And that I can't imagine living in a world where you agree with everything on the TV, but you're at home. What else do you have to do? You watch TV. You just let your kids watch TV because, it's like kids programming. Have fun, kids. I have other things to do. If you work at home or whatever you are doing, like kids, just watch the TV for a bit. And then all of this comes in and it's something.
Big Brother's watching.
I'll tell you what, my husband has an iPhone and I have taken the news off of mine. I don't want their alerts. But he has his on there and I can tell when he comes home, I can almost, when he starts spouting stuff, I'll say, Yahoo, right? Yahoo News.
Yeah.
So one day I thought, we're going to fix this. And I went through his news, and I'm probably going to get so much flack for this. I went through his news, and it was all like, he didn't pick any of it. It was what Yahoo picked for him. And based on clicks, they would feed him more of this. And because he would come home and he'd say, well, based on the news I'm reading, we have a complete lunatic in office and da 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 da. Not that I believe that, because you tell me different. I'm like, you should not believe that because I tell you different. You should not believe it because you have multiple news sources that you read. So I get on that iPhone of his and I start trying to block, not interested, get rid of this, bring on this, and made it kind of a more balanced news feed. Well, when I went back to check the feed to see what popped up, it wouldn't show anything that I said should be recommended. It's kept saying recommended, CNN, recommended. As it was like the phone went into a tizzy. Like, no, you're going to see this. You have to see this. And the programming game is so strong that you can't even counteract it with your own settings on your own phone. They will override it. And I would have thought that was conspiracy 6 months ago.
I don't know. The COVID thing, I mean, it's wrecking our world, but that's really the intent.
Mm-hmm.
They want everybody to be, and you mentioned it's stylish to be at home and whatever. Have you seen the new trend where people are like buying like $900 sweaters so that they look awesome from the waist up for their Zoom calls?
Wow.
Give me some of that action.
I know. I will knit sweaters if you're going to pay me $900 pop. I'm all about that. I think we all would be. New business. But
the only way to enjoy this pandemic right now is to have Kardashian levels of cash, because I don't really follow the Kardashians too much, but when their little blurbs come up, they're living my best life. They're in Tahoe. They're in Turks and Caicos. I mean, they are everywhere, and they're not masked, and they're in bikinis. They are living the pandemic life. We're all doing it wrong.
Right.
We're just all doing it wrong.
I remember that you had a story a little bit ago that you were talking about where you were at a parade. So to contrast,
oh my gosh, I forgot about
the beautiful bikini life and then the parade that you went to.
Okay, so Fort Payne has a Christmas parade every year. This has not happened before because I've asked other people. We were at the end of the parade, so it would technically be the beginning. Like the parade ended and went by us, and it was time to go. Well, the parade had a lot of police cars, fire trucks. It was back the blue. So then here at the end comes a final couple of big trucks with I don't know if it was a sheriff's car. It looked unmarked. It was kind of black. So as they're coming down the road where they have thrown all the Christmas candy for the kids, this guy starts driving right next to where everybody's standing. Kids are jumping out of the way because they're still trying to grab their candy from the road. And he does the occasional whoop, 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 So, but behind him is a guy in the middle of the road blowing the candy and the debris to the side of the road. And we're all cool with that because, it's time to go. They're cleaning up. Well, behind him is a huge industrial blower. I mean, the blower was huge. They had it on full blast into the crowd. The crowd went running and they were just like, time to go. And that's how they got us out of there. No, They didn't want us standing around visiting. It was like, it is time to go. And he continued on down the road like that, blowing debris into the crowd and the crowd running. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Everybody was like, what the heck?
Right. Like, the fire hose is a bit much for this one. So let's get sand blown in your face.
I actually said, what's next? Fire hoses? Yeah, right. It was tons of sand and stuff that was all over the hay that had come off the floats that had gone by with candy.
Not particularly sanitary, I'd say.
No, and my husband said, well, if we didn't have COVID before, we've probably got it now.
Mhm.
They just blew the whole crowd away. It was nuts. Yeah, I forgot about that. I was like, this is America.
No, but it's that sort of cruelty that it's like, oh, well, that just goes unchecked now. That's not like there's not people sitting there on the Fort Payne City Council saying, what was that about?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who approved this? Who put that plan in? And then did other people say, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that will really disperse a crowd. Because the danger to your health is not something flying in your eye. It's,
Mm-hmm.
or your kid potentially getting run over, or, if everyone's running any sort of trampling, oh, well, that's okay. But the real danger is if you stand there and talk to the guy next to you instead of just going home immediately.
Mm-hmm. They cloak it in safety, and that safety equals, well, you are supposed to comply. It's safety. Yeah, that was very weird. It was like we couldn't even have we were all so excited about getting back out into the community for our little Christmas parade, a little bit of normalcy. And then here came Stalin's blowers. Yeah, it was weird. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Kind of are we really experiencing this right now? Is this really happening? Yep.
Yeah, that's the longer this crap goes on and the longer they make it into a bigger thing than it is, the more normal that's going to get. And at some point in time, people are going to be like, oh yeah, here comes the blower at the end of the parade. Let's go. Let's run away before it gets us.
Yeah.
But it's disturbing for real.
This past year, 2020 has just been a blur, an absolute blur. I mean, there's so many things that have happened and gone on that you forget a lot of it. And I think that's what they're counting on, that you'll just be so distracted and busy and going, what the heck, that you won't remember everything that went on. And then one day they're going to tell us maybe that none of this ever went on. It was just always this way.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They're going to work on changing the narrative, and they've been doing it already. So they got kids like mine who are 5 and 7. So if that's how things are, they're not going to remember before. I was showing one of my kids pictures of my husband without his beard. He's only had his beard like a year. And they go, I don't remember Daddy looking like that. I'm like, you don't? It hasn't been that long. But they're impressionable and easy, and that's what they see every day. So, Daddy's always had a beard. Well, no, not really, but I guess if that's all you see, I don't know.
Well, hopefully if they forget he had a beard, that they'll, if things do go back to normal, they'll forget about all this, and it'll just be something everybody laughs about, or something in 10 years we can all laugh about it.
I hope so. I hope so. I don't know.
Laugh about it from our rafts to Cuba. Like, oh, that was really funny, guys.
And
a solar powered raft.
By solar powered, you don't mean that it actually generates any power. You mean that a solar power panel was the easiest thing to make a raft out of.
Yes. Use it as a paddle board.
Guys, it's terrible.
Well, I always say, if this country is going to fall to socialism, I'm going to pick a country that does it better. Okay. I want the socialism that comes with a siesta, bread and wine. I'm not down for this American socialism. We can't even do that right. So there. I'd rather take back up with England than wait around for this stuff to roll out. That'll get me canceled.
Well, I don't think the Englanders would agree with you and be like, run, Liz, run.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'd like the best of the worst.
Yeah. I don't know. I could be down with us teaming up, once bitter rivals teaming up. to take out whatever, you know.
I don't know.
We'll just call it the long hiatus, you know, since the Revolutionary War to now. But then we're going to team up. I like it.
Just in time for Charles to take over.
All right.
Well,
Well,
thank you
thanks,
guys
Liz.
for having me.
Yes,
Loved
thank you
it.
for joining us today. It was a lot of fun.
All right. You guys
All right.
take care.
Yep. Thank you for coming on, Liz. And
You are
check
welcome.
her out at Ewe and Dye Yarns on Etsy and on your social media pages at where can
Just
people
Ewe
find
and Dye is the yarn page. Everything else is private. No, I'm kidding. I'm on Vero, MeWe. You can find me just about anywhere as Ewe and Dye. I've tried to put a placeholder anywhere. So that's me.
So Liz is like us, and if you search for her on the places, odds are you'll find her.
Yes.
Might not be active, like I'm not active, but she's there, so that's cool.
That's right.
So, all right, thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks,
All
Liz.
right,
Have a good day.
bye.
Bye. Anyway, so before we go, we want to announce the winner of our limerick contest.
Yes, it's Lenunzer. No, Lenuna's 9. Lenuna's 9 won the limerick contest, and I will just give it a quick read so that everybody can enjoy it one last time. The election sure was a confuser. It's turning me into a boozer, but we will endure. And of one thing I'm sure, if you must cheat to win, you're a loser. So, I will be emailing you. You've won 3 patterns from Knits and Knacks, from their online store. So congratulations. Thanks for playing.
Yay!
And thanks for everybody who joined us for that. It was a lot of fun, and a lot of people really enjoyed it. So thanks for taking the time to write your limerick and sharing it.
Yeah. Enjoy your patterns from
Yeah.
Tina. And we will see you all next week then.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right, bye.